opium and Bibles. Two powerful forces sailed into China during the 19th century. While one poisoned a nation, the other sought to save it. But was salvation even possible amidst the chaos? Let's uncover the surprising and complex role of Christian missionaries during the Opium Wars. To understand the Opium Wars, we must first look at China in the early 19th century. The Qing dynasty, proud and deeply rooted in tradition, ruled over a vast empire.
Our celestial empire possesses all things in prolific abundance and lacks no product within its own borders.
For centuries, China saw itself as the Middle Kingdom, a self-sufficient civilization superior to all others. Foreign trade was tightly controlled, with Canton being the only port open to Western merchants. The British, however, had developed a taste for Chinese tea, silk, and porcelain. They paid for these goods with silver, but this drained Britain's treasury and caused trade imbalance. The solution? Opium. The British East India Company began smuggling opium from India into China. By the 1830s, opium addiction was rampant, destroying families and draining China's economy. In 1839, Commissioner Lin Zexu led the charge to eradicate opium. In his famous letter to Queen Victoria, Lin wrote,
"I have heard that you strictly prohibit opium in your own country, indicating unmistakably that you know how harmful opium is. You do not wish opium to harm your own country, but you choose to bring that harm to other countries such as China. Why?"
Lin's moral reasoning was sharp and direct.
A murderer of one person is subject to the death sentence. Just imagine how many people opium has killed. This is the rationale behind the new law, which says that any foreigner who brings opium to China will be sentenced to death.
Lin Zexu is celebrated as a national hero in China for his courageous opposition to the British. However, some critics argued that Lin's noble actions were too radical and led to the outbreak of the war. Amid this crisis, the association of missionaries with foreign powers created significant problems. Many Chinese saw Christianity as a tool of imperialism. Missionaries often traveled under the protection of Western gunboats, which undermined their message of peace and love. In the book The Opium War, 1840 to 1842, Peter Ward Fay delves into the striking intersection of Christianity and opium during that era. He highlights the story of Karl Gutzlaff, a German missionary. He distributed countless tracts to the Chinese, sometimes from one side of a ship, while opium was offloaded on the other. This fascinating yet troubling narrative underscores how Gutzlaff's efforts wove Christianity and opium together. The First Opium War in 1839. Lin's campaign against opium sparked outrage in Britain, triggering the First Opium War. For China, it was a fight for sovereignty. For Britain, a defense of free trade. The First Opium War, fought from 1839 to 1842, marked the beginning of China's century of humiliation. Armed with superior naval technology, the British quickly defeated the Qing forces. The war ended with the Treaty of Nanking. Under this treaty, China ceded Hong Kong to Britain, opened 5 treaty ports to foreign trade for China. This was a moment of great humiliation. For missionaries, however, it was a turning point. Before the war, Christian missionaries faced significant obstacles. The Qing government banned missionary activity, and foreigners were restricted to Canton. But the Treaty of Nanking allowed missionaries to live and work in treaty ports like Shanghai, Guangzhou, and Xiamen. For many missionaries, this was the opening they had prayed for. The Second Opium War, fought between 1856 and 1860, further deepened China's struggles. This time, Britain was joined by France in demanding even greater concessions from the Qing government. The result was another defeat for China and the signing of the Treaty of Tientsin. This treaty legalized the opium trade, opened more treaty ports, allowed foreign embassies in Beijing, and granted missionaries the right to travel and preach anywhere in China. For missionaries, this was a historic moment. For the Qing government and the Chinese people, it was another bitter pill to swallow. One of the most infamous events of this war was the destruction of the old summer palace in Beijing by British and French troops. The palace, a symbol of China's cultural heritage, was looted and burned, leaving a lasting scar on the nation's psyche. During this time, a new wave of missionaries arrived. Hudson Taylor, founder of the China Inland Mission, was one of the most influential. Taylor broke from the norm by dressing in Chinese clothing and immersing himself in Chinese culture. He believed that the gospel should be shared in a way that resonated with local traditions. Taylor's work led to the establishment of schools, hospitals, and churches, especially in rural areas. Unlike earlier missionaries who stayed in treaty ports, Taylor ventured into the interior, reaching millions who had never encountered Christianity. Missionaries like Hudson Taylor and Benjamin Broomhall were among the few Western voices to condemn this trade. They understood the physical, moral, and social destruction caused by opium. Hudson Taylor once remarked that,
"The opium traffic is doing more evil in China in a week than missions are doing good in a year."
This stark observation highlights not just the scale of the crisis, but also the moral urgency felt by missionaries to stop the trade. The Treaty of Wanxia had declared the opium trade illegal, but enforcement was weak. It wasn't until decades later, through sustained efforts by missionaries and reformers, that the trade began to wane. The anti-opium movement demonstrated the power of faith-driven advocacy. In 1871, the first rehabilitation center for opium addicts was opened in Hangzhou. This center, spearheaded by missionaries, sought to heal both the body and the soul, combining medical care with Christian teachings. These efforts were steps toward recovery and hope. In the book Crusaders Against Opium, Kathleen L. Lodwick portrays Protestant missionaries as early, tireless advocates against opium, driven by moral convictions and a desire to reform Chinese society.
As opium continued to devastate China, it was the missionaries, especially the medical doctors, who played a pivotal role in revealing the true dangers of the drug. They worked tirelessly to counter the myths that had allowed opium spread, gathering medical evidence to expose its destructive effects. Despite facing great opposition, they kept the issue before the British public and government, campaigning relentlessly against the opium trade.
The Opium Wars and the missionary movement in China left a legacy that is both inspiring and deeply complicated. The wars weakened China, opened it to foreign exploitation, but they also brought new ideas, technologies, and faith traditions that have shaped modern China. Today, Christianity is one of the fastest growing religions in China. Millions worship in both state-sanctioned and underground churches, reflecting the enduring impact of the missionaries who arrived during the 19th century. The Opium Wars undoubtedly left a legacy of pain and challenges that still resonate in China today, casting a shadow over the period of Western involvement. However, amidst the struggles and complexities of this time, the gospel made a profound impact, bringing hope and salvation to many souls in China. Despite the flaws and failings of human actions, God's sovereign will prevailed, using even the most difficult circumstances to fulfill His divine plan. This serves as a reminder of His power to bring good out of hardship and to accomplish His purposes in ways beyond human understanding.
When asked by the press, before going as a missionary to China, "Do you really expect you can make an impression on the great Chinese empire?" Morrison answered, "No, sir. I expect God will.
I am ready to burn out for God. I am ready to endure any hardship, if by any means I might save some. Each longing of my heart is to make known my glorious Redeemer to those who have never heard.
I believe it will only be known on the last day how much has been accomplished in overseas missions by the prayers of earnest believers at home."
God's work, done in God's way, will never lack God's supply.
Circumstances may appear to wreck our lives and God's plans, but God is not helpless among the ruins.